We're going to start off by emulsifying our olive oil and our balsamic vinegar. For the stuffed acorn squash and butternut squash, I used a blend of our butter infused olive oil, along with the garlic infused oil. As well as for the balsamic, I used our cinnamon pear. For the fall, we've got some great flavors for the fall. Think about the maple, the cinnamon pear, our cranberry pear, white balsamic. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and emulsify. So you always want to start with your olive oil. And of course, the way that I measure is I try to put in enough oil, just enough to hit the bottom of my blade on my immersion blender. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the balsamic. And then emulsify. And there you go. That ought to work perfectly. Okay. So I've taken a butternut squash, and you're going to do the same thing with the acorn squash. Just cut them in half. You want to go ahead and scoop out all the seeds and everything that are in here. And then what I like to do so that the oil and the balsamic seeps down into the balsamic is I like to put little slices or score the butternut and the acorn squash, and then just brush the balsamic on. So just take your knife and just kind of run it through the squash. Make sure you have a sharp knife because these little guys are pretty tough. Same thing with down here in the little cup, so to speak, which is also, if you can imagine, where you're going to go ahead and stuff the squash and the butternut. So we're just going to take this balsamic and we're just going to brush it on. Let it sit for a little bit, and then you're going to brush it on again. You can see how it starts to get down into those little slices that you made in the squash. And then just let it rest for a little. And then you can come back in a few minutes and then brush it again. So then you're going to go ahead. I used again our apple pie spice blend. I like this spice for the fall. Sprinkle it on. So I'm using our spaghetti seasoning, which has all the really, really good flavors in there. So I just put a little bit in my hand, about a palm full, and you're going to kind of crunch it up a little bit and then just sprinkle it on. Now you want to preheat your oven to about 350 degrees, 375. Put them in on a cookie sheet with a little bit of water underneath just to kind of let it steam a little bit. But you're going to roast these. They're going to take probably 35, possibly an hour to do. It might even take an hour and a half. Just poke it with a fork, and when you start seeing that the fork will go into the squash without any resistance, then pull them out, because you're going to put the stuffing in and bake them some more. So you want them pretty well cooked. We're going to roast some cranberries to add to our stuffing for our stuffed squash. And what I did was, first of all, you're going to just take a little bit of that olive oil. Again, I used the butter and the basil infused the butter and the garlic infused together, and a little bit of the cinnamon pear, the maple, dark balsamic, and you just want to toss them so that they coat. The oil coats the cranberries. Now, I added probably a good 6 or 7 cloves of garlic that I sliced really, really thin, and I just added them to there and mix it in with it. And then to that, now cranberries are pretty tart, so I added some of the pie spice, and I also added some of that same seasoning that we seasoned our squash with. So you're going to just go ahead and put them on a cookie sheet, put them in the oven at 350 for about 35 minutes or so. Kind of watch them, keep an eye on them. There you go. And then when they come out, they're going to look like this. So for the filling for the butternut squash, this is a recipe that I've been working on for a couple of years now. You can use this for all kinds of things, but I love this time of the year. I love butternuts. I love acorn squash. So what I did is I took some of our risotto from here in the store and I cooked it according to the directions. Now to that, you can add just about anything you'd like. For the fall, I like to add some carrots and some onions, but first you're going to saute all of that. Make sure that your vegetables are kind of soft when you put them in there, because you don't want to bite into into a hard carrot. So what I did was I added some carrots, some sauteed carrots and some onions. I put a little bit of raisins in there and a can of red beans and a can of black beans. So it's a hearty filling. And then when your butternuts are finished roasting, I've gone ahead and we'll be showing you this here shortly, but I've scooped out a little bit of the butternut squash, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to add that to our filling. So just cube it like bite-sized pieces, of course, and we're going to add that to our mixture here. And then we're going to take some of those beautiful roasted cranberries and we're going to add some of those as well. You want to save some of them, obviously. You don't want to, you may not want to put them all in there. We're going to garnish our butternuts when we put them in the oven to roast with some of the fresh roasted cranberries. So you need to make sure you save some. So here's our butternut and our acorn squash after we've roasted it. You can see how beautifully they've caramelized. The oil and the balsamic, just gives it that nice glaze. So what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, with this butternut squash, we're going to scoop out a little bit of this. And remember when I put the butternut in with the filling? This is where I got it from. So you just want to kind of run your spoon around there, and you can see how nice and tender they are. So it gives you an idea of how tender the butternut should be when you poke your fork or your spoon in there. Okay, but you want to make a little boat, so to speak, like a little resting place for your filling. And of course your acorn squash has already got a nice bowl in there anyway, so you don't have to really worry about it. If you wanted to make it a little bit deeper, certainly you can do that. So we're just going to take some of our filling and we're just going to fill these up. Now when I make these for myself, I just help myself to the whole half. But certainly when you're serving them with your Thanksgiving dinner, your Christmas dinner, you could, go ahead and slice them and serve it that way. Now you're going to bake these again. And actually what's nice about this recipe is you can do a lot of this the day before your Thanksgiving dinner or your holiday dinner. And put them in the oven or put them in your refrigerator at this point. And then the next day, all you have to do is put them in the oven and roast them again. So if they're chilled, they're going to take a little bit longer to warm up. But if you do them all on the same day, I would put them back in the oven at about 350 degrees and cook them for about 35 minutes or so. And then in 35 minutes, you're going to take a little bit of Parmesan or possibly a little bit of feta cheese, whatever your preference is, and just sprinkle it right over the top. Leave it in the oven for about another 10 minutes so that cheese gets really nice and toasty, and then serve.